Welcome back to our show. Thank you for tuning in. We're on episode 61, JP.
61, guys.
How are you doing, JP? How's JP's world going?
Everything's going pretty well, considering what everything that's going on. So
Yeah. Did you watch the Tyson Roy Jones Jr. fight?
I couldn't make it through it, man.
You were bored or
No, what I was streaming it on was not cooperating.
I'm sorry, you were streaming it? Stop this man.
But yeah, I seen the results. I seen all the highlights. Not satisfied with the results.
Yeah, the results. I mean, it's an exhibition, so I
Yeah.
wasn't expecting a whole lot out of that, but Tyson won that fight, in my opinion.
Oh yeah,
And Tyson, I believe, is what, 55, 56?
54.
Whatever. He's looked incredible, man. That guy still scares me to this day. He
He
scared me as a kid. He scares me as a grown man.
And he lost 100 pounds to take that fight.
Yeah,
That's incredible.
super impressive. What else happened since the last time we talked? Oh, the guy that played the original Darth Vader that did the suit. He was like the actor, physical actor. He passed. David Charles Prowse, 1935 to 2020. So Darth Vader's going now. So the only original squad now is Luke Skywalker and Han Solo for all you Star Wars nerds out there.
Wow.
Also, I wanted to give a cool announcement. We have some exciting new topics coming to the show that we haven't really got into yet. We're going deep into the AI, thanks to Colleen Geis, who is a listener who suggested a certain guest. I don't want to say the guest names, but we have a really good episode coming with that. We have a really good cloning episode coming. Vaccines, Dark Hollywood, Ancient History, Knights Templar, The Revelations, and Skull and Bone Society. We're going into all that stuff real soon. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yes.
And I did get an email about somebody having a hard time getting a hold of us. He didn't know where to go to talk to us.
What?
The easiest, I know, the easiest way to get a hold of us is email us, truthertheorypodcast@gmail.com. I am going to work on the Facebook page for our podcast. It's been lacking, been very neglected. The Instagram one's completely neglected. And Twitter is, I don't even know if we have a Twitter. I don't even know how to use a Twitter. I don't even know what a Twitter is.
I don't have it.
But we have YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. They're all going to step up soon. We're going to be able to see them. And we'll keep them active on what's coming and all that good stuff. So follow us on all those.
Yeah, reach out to us. Mine is TOTJP on the gram.
And I'm at Real E Willie. So hit us up on there, and you can see a lot of cool behind the scenes stuff of what's coming, guests that are coming, episodes that are coming, a lot of cool behind the scenes stuff. And sometimes JP and I go live, and you can talk to us too and ask us one-on-one questions. What's funner than talk to Beavis and Butthead? Question there, huh? We're also going to be sending out some stickers to all our listeners who want them too. So let me know if you want a sticker. We have a 2-inch. You want to show them, JP, the model? Or if you're just listening to this, you won't see it. But if you're on YouTube, so we got a nice little die-cast cut sticker you can put on your laptops, whatever you want. Show off your favorite podcast. Support your people. Let me know, and I'll mail it to you. I'll hook you up with a sticker. So do that through truthertheorypodcast@gmail.com. And, dude, I got to tell you this, man. Today I received a book, a Phantom book, just came out of nowhere. It looks very interesting. It's called That Shining Moment. Sometimes you have to let go so that you can hold on forever, by Eric Lowans. I was like, man, this would be a cool read and a cool guest. So we're going to channel and get Mr. Eric Lowans on right now. Episode number 61. Welcome to our podcast, Mr. Eric Lowans.
Well, hey, guys, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me on. And I'm glad we were connected psychically because I just suddenly came to me to dial in tonight.
It's something weird with this podcast, but it's special. So I'm glad that you were feeling it. Also, Mr. Eric is having some internet camera connection issues, but we got him nice, loud, and clear on the vocals. We're going to put a beautiful picture of him right here, and you'll see that. But there will be no visual video with him tonight. So it's going to be a little bit tricky for JP and I because we're basically staring at ourselves while we talk. It's a little creepy. How are you doing, Mr. Eric?
I am doing good. I'm out here in the Midwest where we got about 3 inches of snow, and it suddenly went from being 65 degrees and sunny last week to 3 inches of snow and really cold and wet.
Dang.
That sounds like Midwest weather.
Yeah.
What state are you in?
I am in Ohio now.
Ohio, okay. Cool.
Central Ohio, Columbus area.
Oh, awesome.
Right on. You guys got more snow than we do. We have 0 at the moment.
This has been a very strange Colorado winter. Yeah. We have what, one blast of snow, and that's about it. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it because I like my cold temperatures. But it's chilly right now, but no snow. It's kind of strange.
Out here we mowed the grass 3 days before Thanksgiving, so that was probably the last time we'll mow this season.
Right.
That's my favorite grass cutting.
Right.
despise cutting grass. I did it as a teenager. It was my first job, and I just hate it so much. So whenever I do that last seasonal cut, it's always so rewarding knowing that it's going to be dead for a while and won't come back. The more I cut you, you just keep growing.
You
So let's get into this awesome book, Mr. Eric Lowans, That Shining Moment. What made you want to write this book? And let's talk about some of the stuff in it without giving too much away, because if you want that book, you need to go on Amazon or Kindle, and we'll send all the links on the bottom of our notes too so you can get it. But you definitely want to get this book.
Oh my goodness. Well, like all good stories, it started in a bar in Washington, D.C. about 25, 26 years ago. In my previous life, I was a corporate security director, and I was working with a guy named Bob, who was a former, are we allowed to say agency initials, or should we just abbreviate?
Yeah, no.
Do it. I would do it.
Bob was a great guy. He was a friend and mentor for many years. He was a Marine in Vietnam. His forte happened to be RF communications. He was actually assigned after Vietnam. He went to the same base in Japan where Lee Harvey Oswald had been a few years earlier. So he had some good stories. Bob got out of the Marine Corps and ended up in the CIA doing very much the same type of work. He did that for a number of years, met his wife there. And eventually he got out, started his own business in the Beltway doing security consulting and investigations and things like that globally for us. And as a security director, we needed contacts like that. So after being introduced to him, we got to be friends really, really quick. He was just a very amiable guy. And then one night we were sitting in a hotel bar, and I think about the third or fourth scotch, since nobody was really keeping score, he started to talk about the Kennedy assassination. And some of his interests there. We found we shared some interests. And he said, listen, if I told you something, could you keep it confidential until after I'm gone? And Bob died about 10 years ago, and his wife actually passed away about a year ago. It was just before last Christmas. So I figured the timing was right. So what you have here is a fictional account, perhaps, of a story that was told to me by this ex-CIA guy. And he went on to say that, look, even the FBI would tell you that there is, as yet, undiscovered evidence of the events that took place in Dealey Plaza on November 22nd of 1963. Perhaps it's in somebody's basement, could be in their attic somewhere, and it could be that it's been passed on already and somebody doesn't even know that they've got it. So in this particular case, it's two firefighters, they're brothers. One is living in Dallas at the time, and the other one is from Hartford, Connecticut. And they're drinking beers in the backyard on Christmas night, and they're talking about a fire where they found an undeveloped roll of 8mm film in this guy's sock. The guy had military ID on him, which connected him to the Air Force. And they forget to turn it in. It's a bad case of arson. They lost two firefighters that night. And in the arson investigator's case, he drops the film. Well, the other firefighter picks it up, throws it in his turnout gear, and that's where the story starts off. So they realize, hey, you know what? Let's take a look at this. One of the brothers is a little bit, perverted, and he says, there could be some good porn on this. Back in the day, they didn't have YouTube, so if you wanted your porn, you had to get sleazy Super 8 movies. So he says, I got a friend up in Hartford. When I go back after Christmas, we'll get this thing developed and we'll see what's on it. He does, and he gets really freaked out by it. And what it is it's footage of the Kennedy assassination that was never before seen. It was taken from the post office building that most people never really consider as a part of Dealey Plaza because it was a good 300 yards away. But with a good telephoto lens and a downward angle, what it kind of shows is just before Oswald pokes that rifle out, there's a guy in a white short sleeve shirt behind him stacking boxes. So that's the first part of the film that catches their eye. And then what really freaks the brothers out and causes this film to go into kind of a sequestration for the next few years is that there's a cut in the film where after the motorcade jumps onto the Stemmons Freeway and heads to Parkland Hospital, the film cuts out. Then it cuts back on again, and it's obvious that somebody is running across asphalt somewhere. And it's not Dealey Plaza, and it's not the airport at Love Field. It's actually at an Air Force base. And what they see is a group of generals, Army and Air Force, looking at the color of their uniforms, and you can tell they're high-ranking by looking at their caps. And what they're watching is an air show. Two flying saucers, one's flitting around doing all kinds of aerobatics, and the other one happens to be motionless. And they're applauding as if they expected this air show to impress them. So far from being scared, far from being anxious, it appears that the Air Force knew these guys were coming. And then, of course, the film cuts out. So then we can follow it along, and I won't give too much of the book away, but, 2 weeks before he was killed, and you guys have probably heard this story, Kennedy sent a note to the CIA and instructed some of his staff to open the UFO files to the Russians. We were spying on them, they were spying on us, and if you remember, they shot down a U-2 with Francis Gary Powers in it. And I think Kennedy's true intent was to make sure that as we ventured into space together to try to explore what this phenomenon was, that we should work together so that we know that it's not the U.S. attacking the USSR or vice versa. And that was what he was talking about doing just 2 weeks before he was killed. And he wanted to get away from a policy of isolationism, which was something that part of his cabinet disagreed with, the Joint Chiefs of Staff disagreed with. He was truly into trying to mend some fences. And if you think back and listen to the speech he gave at breakfast a couple of hours before he was killed, breakfast at the Texas Hotel there in Fort Worth, he even talked about isolationism in that meeting as well. He talked about the Tactical Fighter Experimental Program and some other things, but it was obvious Kennedy wanted to develop a new era of cooperation between us and the Soviet Union. So when we follow the characters through the book, we'll see that those documents that the FBI later said were frauds, they were absolute forgeries. Well, we're going to see how those documents actually showed up on an FBI agent's desk before those documents ended up into the public sector. Did I give away too much, or did that totally confuse everybody?
No, that's good. That is, I'm interested to know why those films were together. I mean, it's obviously the same person, but
it was the same. Yeah, exactly. It's the same photographer, and he had the same camera. He just never had time to change the reel, because by the time he got back to his base, his commanding officer said, "You got to get your butt to the flight line right now. There's something you have to take a picture of." And so he grabbed the camera, grabbed some still stuff, and headed to the flight line, and realized he still had unexposed footage in there. So he shot that up, and it was on the same reel as the Kennedy assassination. So that's why that film got buried, because people were totally scared to death of what would happen if anybody knew they had it.
Yeah. That is wild. What do you think?
The whole situation's so crazy to me.
Yeah.
It seems like more and more stuff always comes out when you don't think there could be any more stuff that can come out.
Yeah, there really is. There's so much. It just goes deep. It goes deep in every direction you can think of. I mean, look at this. This is totally new. Now you have a UFO like connected to all this, or somebody was there, somebody knows. It's wild.
Well, the whole UFO thing has exploded, no pun intended. They're not new. It's not Roswell. I mean, UFOs have been written about and documented for many, many centuries, religious texts throughout the world. Even the Pope a few years ago came out and said, listen, we've reviewed this, and the Catholic Church no longer frowns upon this belief that the universe is big enough and God is big enough that it's okay to believe in life on other planets. So if you think about how we've been governed as a planet for the last 2,000 years, not to get religious, but it was kind of like, if the Pope didn't agree with it, we're not going to teach it. So when we think back now with social media and with cable television, and you guys are probably familiar with a show called Ancient Aliens, or you get the Discovery Channel, History Channel, and all those have kind of started to open people's eyes to at least the possibility that we're not alone. And I don't know what your personal experiences are. I was a cop years ago, and I'd taken some weird reports from people who were absolutely petrified and absolutely truthful in telling me what they saw. But if you think back, the UFO thing just kind of emerged into the mainstream news. What am I looking for here? It kind of surged into the mainstream after the Ken Arnold sighting, and that was before Roswell back in 1947, when Ken Arnold said he saw some stuff skipping back. Um, he saw these discs skipping across the mountaintops.
What year was that, Eric?
Roswell was July of 47. I want to say the Ken Arnold thing was right before it, within a couple of weeks. If you Google it, if you Google the Ken Arnold sighting, he was actually the guy that coined the expression flying saucers. Because if you look at the Ken Arnold report, he never described them as saucers. He said they looked more like curved wings. And they flitted, and he said they kind of skimmed across through the air like saucers skipping across a pond. So that's where the term flying saucer actually came from.
That's interesting.
So, so I want to give due credit to Mr. Arnold there. He's probably passed on years and years ago. But he was a pilot. He was flying a plane and happened to be northbound up in the Pacific Northwest, and they caught his attention. Pilots are always looking for other aircraft to make sure they don't hit them. And he saw these, I want to say 7 or 8 discs in formation. And at the rate he was flying, he knew that these things were traveling in excess of 1,000 miles an hour. And back then, we didn't have anything that would do that. So then, lo and behold, in July of 47, a rancher, after a thunderstorm, finds wreckage of something. And I always say, or some things, plural, because they're, depending on who you talk to, there were 2 different sites where debris was collected. One was near Roswell and one was near Corona. And I'm not an expert on this, but there have been numerous books written on the crash. And this, of course, is the one that kind of introduced it to the public, because the Army Air Force at the time went ahead and released a front page story that said, we have a down flying saucer and we're studying the debris. And after the general got a hold of that, that's when they clamped down on the information and said, no, it was a weather balloon. And of course, they took pictures of Jesse Marcel, who was an intelligence officer at Roswell at the time. Poor Jesse is kneeling down, holding up a piece of a kite. It was a Rowan radar reflector that was usually tied to a balloon. Well, this is a career intelligence officer in the 509th Bomb Group. The 509th had nuclear weapons. So you're thinking, how could a career intelligence officer in the Air Force mistake a kite for down saucer wreck? It just doesn't make sense. Right. So you can begin to see that there's been an information lockdown for the longest time. And as the late Stanton Friedman used to tell us, that we began to see more and more reports of flying saucers, or let's say unidentified flying objects after that point. And his belief as a physicist was it was because life has always been out there in the cosmos, but once we exploded the nuclear weapons in World War II, somehow that sent a signal across the cosmos. And I think Stanton Friedman said, uh-oh, the kids have found the matches. And I always like that analogy, because it was like, if they didn't know we were here before, now they found it out. So that's when you started seeing them coming in more and more. But as he also said, not all UFOs are flying saucers, but all flying saucers are UFOs. And I draw that distinction because, again, I think it's in the foreword in the book, if you want to look this up. There was a colonel named Corso, C-O-R-S-O, who wrote the book Day After Roswell. He was an Army intelligence officer, and he was the one that started the story that some of the stuff that we have today, whether it's fiber optics, transistors, Kevlar, and things like that, were actually stuff that they had back engineered off of down saucers. When you talk to DuPont, or the people that actually released the products for patent, they said, no, it's the hard work of our distinguished employees, etc. And that's why I put the forward in the book that, having worked for defense contractor before, it's very easy to see how somebody within the government could go to someone in a corporation and say, you guys have an expertise at developing XYZ. Well, here's something we'd like you to work towards, and here's a head start on it, without ever telling the scientists where they got the original idea. So you have scientists that are working on a project because they have bosses that said, let's take a look at this new pharmacological product, or this new type of RF transmission. I always laugh and say, well, if you got a hold of a piece of equipment and it said made on Alpha Centauri or something, then you would know it came from a flying saucer, right? Well, nobody's going to do that. If you're trying to keep a secret a secret, you're going to break that information up into small compartments. So, again, I hope I didn't get off topic here.
No, this is a perfect topic. I agree with you 100%. I love this stuff.
You brought up Roswell, July 1947. That's the year my father was born. And my mom always teased my dad that he came from some kind of alien ship. He was born that exact time period.
I'll be darned.
So I'm a hybrid.
Yeah.
As are we all anymore, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fun stuff. I love thinking about it. Good.
What's your take on the remote viewing situation?
Excellent. Depending on who you talk to, if you talk to the actual people involved in the government project through SRI, Stanford Research Institute out in California, they're the ones that begin to study the RV, at least, let's say modern day RV remote viewing, and to establish protocols. There was a guy named Hal Puthoff, who's you've probably seen on TV, Russell Targ, who was a physicist, and some other players. And the government came to Stanford and they said, hey, we understand you're doing some laboratory work on this in terms of quantum mechanics and some other things. But they were studying how two items can move at the same time and place, quantum entanglement theory. And again, I'm a behavioral sciences major. I'm not a physicist. So if I stumble over this stuff, bear with me. But in quantum entanglement, what they're saying is two particles can behave identically as if they're talking to each other, even though they're not physically connected. Well, they had been doing some of this work, and the government came in and said, guess what? The Soviets, since World War II, have been experimenting with psychic warfare. They've been using, with some levels of success, psychics to spy on us, to spy on our government, to spy on our industry. And the SRI project was initially opened to do just that, to study whether or not any type of psychic influencing people could, whether or not they could be taught it, what does it take to make a person psychic, which psychics are better at discovering things than others. And what they found was, remote viewing can be taught to anyone, but like music or golf, some people are going to be better at it than others. Some people, you can take golf lessons until you're blue in the face and you're never going to par a hole, but you still enjoy the game. Same thing, not everybody plays the violin. So some people at the age of 4 or 5 are impresarios. I mean, they're going to play it really well. So the remote viewing project went from research into an application side. And what happened was they invited an Army officer out to see it in process, to show them how they did it before the Army was willing to expend any money on it. And they had, I think it was Lieutenant Colonel or somebody, sat down, and in 2 hours, not only did he believe in it, he was able to do it himself. And he was a total skeptic when he went in. So with that, the CIA closed that project down, they said, in 1995, because they said that was unreliable. We didn't get our money's worth, and it was never tasked operationally. And that's all bull. If you read some of the books by Targ or by Joe McMoneagle, McMoneagle, Joe McMonagle's written, I want to say, 4 or 5 really good books, really easy to read. He was a former chief warrant officer in the Army, and he got into the program, Vietnam veteran. He's still alive. I think you can still catch his stuff on YouTube. But if you read his books and you see the types of things that they really did uncover, it's amazing. And that's the kind of stuff they were allowed to talk about. They weren't allowed to talk about a lot of the stuff they did because it was all classified. So the CIA allegedly closed that program down in 1995. But here's the kicker. As a former investigator and intelligence officer myself, I can tell you, if you go out to LinkedIn or other social media and look at these guys' resumes, everybody who was involved in that program has written books, and you can see where they work now. And I won't mention the name on here, but you can see that they're now part of such and such a group. Well, they're government contractors. So when the government said, yeah, we got out of the remote viewing business because we just didn't get anything out of it, that's bull. They did get something out of it. They're still using it, except they're not doing it with government people. They're buying the information from government contractors, just like we do with our space program now. If you look at Elon Musk or Bigelow Aerospace, if you want to ride to the ISS, to the International Space Station, you gotta ride on Russian rocket because we're not flying anything at NASA. It's all privatized now. And that is a $3 trillion business. So it's big business. So the reason I bring that up, and forgive me for dropping Bigelow's name, but they're currently closed down because of COVID. But a lot of the stuff that was formerly in government hands has gone into the private sector. And one of the principal reasons is it's easy. It's probably a little bit cheaper for them. They don't have to pay a payroll. They don't have to make a big investment. They can buy what they want. The other thing, though, is something called the Freedom of Information Act. If you're researching Kennedy or remote viewing or life on Mars, you can submit a request to the government, to the appropriate agency under FOIA, and they're required to release data to you unless they can show a national security reason not to, which means that you'll get back a page that's all redacted. You didn't know about that? Look up FOIA, Freedom of Information Act. Well, here's the thing. Now that they've moved that stuff to the private sector, you no longer have that right because it's private. You'd have to have a subpoena. In order to have a subpoena to get that information, you would have to have a cause of action, which means they would have had to, the company that has the secrets would have to have wronged you for you to bring a lawsuit against them for you to be able to subpoena that data. So now, and the reason I played with Bigelow is because it's not a secret. He was very active in UFOs. He was a hotelier. He owned a hotel chain, made his billions that way, and then got into aerospace and started making stuff for the space station and got really interested in space. Well, before he started to focus on Bigelow Aerospace, guess what he owned? The Skinwalker Ranch. And if you look up Skinwalker Ranch, you'll find tons and tons of information. Anyway, Bigelow owned that in conjunction with the U.S. government. They began to explore some of the phenomenon that was taking place at Skinwalker. And now there's I think there's a TV series that ran last summer. I can't remember the name of it. It might be called Skinwalker Ranch for all I know, but they had a TV show where every week they went out and did some stuff. And they had scientists that were along as a part of this team that were baffled by what they saw. So anyway, not to get off topic again, but here's what my takeaway is on remote viewing. We know of it in this country since 1973, and that was something that Bob told me about when we were drinking 25 years ago. I never gave it another thought. But I was watching, I think it was Joe McMoneagle. He was demonstrating remote viewing 10, 15 years ago. I was watching TV and saw it. I thought, that's phenomenal. That is really crazy that they can do that. And then I thought, this is amazing. Why aren't we hearing more about it? And the reason was because it was a secret. So Bob had mentioned the fact that he was the one that told me that the CIA was using psychics to develop intelligence on certain terrorist groups or on certain criminals or certain threats to our society. Well, they weren't the first ones to do it. If you think back, I don't know if you guys are into military history, but if you go back and you study the career of a guy named Otto Skorzeny, he was a Nazi special operations colonel. He took a glider regiment in to rescue Mussolini when he was being held captive up in a castle in some mountain somewhere. Well, there's a lot of castles and a lot of mountains in Italy. And this is before they got him for real. Second time they arrested him, they hung him upside down. You know how that one ends. But the point is that there's all these mountains, there's all these castles. They didn't know where they were holding him. Himmler had been a student of the occult, and he engaged. There was a woman named Maria Orsich. I think the U.S. spelling is O-R-S-I-C-H. Beautiful, beautiful blonde woman, psychic. Himmler's belief in the occult got him to try to find psychics to help locate Mussolini. That being said, the trouble was at the time they'd already jailed most of the psychics because they were rounding up anybody that they didn't think was a perfect Aryan specimen. Well, unfortunately, that included some of the psychics. So Maria Orsich was part of the Vril, V-R-I-L, or Thule Society, T-H-U-L-E. So Himmler engaged them to try to find out which castle, which mountain Mussolini was in. And guess what? They were right. Otto Skorzeny put together a combat operations plan. They got a bunch of guys in gliders, a bunch of commandos and parachutes. They parachuted in and rescued Mussolini. Now, most of the history books don't want to tell you that part of it. They talk about the daring raid, but they don't tell you how they knew which castle Mussolini was in. So the remote viewing goes way, way back in terms of military applications. The takeaway from that is at the end of the war, the Russians and us were competing to steal all the German rocket scientists. Well, while we were trying to get Werner von Braun and his group out of there and sequestered in the desert somewhere so they could build the Saturn rocket that would get us to the moon, the Russians were taking all the psychics. And I don't know if you've ever heard the story of Die Glocke. That was the bell. And supposedly Hitler was working on some anti-gravity propulsion system during World War II. Well, the Glocke and the now I'm having a brain cramp. The colonel that was in charge of the program, they disappeared. They never got tried at Nuremberg. They never ended up anywhere else after the war. No Argentina, no nothing. Until 1965 in Kecksburg, when this acorn-shaped bell plowed into the forest out there, and the government said, no, nothing crashed. It was just it was a meteor. But all the people saw the army trucks coming in and taking this acorn out. Well, the acorn was exactly what the Glocke looked like. So the idea was that Hitler and Himmler, between RV and back engineering their extraterrestrial craft, supposedly they had a crash of a UFO in the Black Forest about 1937 that Hitler didn't want to talk about. But supposedly the Nazis had a down saucer before we did. And the skeptics would say, again, well, wait a second, you're telling me you can get here from another star system, but you can't navigate through the forest? So, I'm not a pilot, so I don't tell them how to fly, just know that that's what happened. So going back to the RV, it's not new. Flying saucers are not new, but RV works, and it works in a military application. It works in intelligence applications, and some police departments have had tremendous success identifying missing persons, finding bodies through psychics, locating people who are fugitives. They don't talk about it because, again, mainstream media is it's part of that cancel culture. If you come out talking about the wrong thing, they're going to make you look like an idiot on the evening news. So that's why I say it all ties together: the remote viewing, the Kennedy assassination, and the UFO issue. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
We booked this episode with remote viewing too. It's impressive.
Yeah, absolutely.
I do want to give it a shot. I want to give it a try. If anybody can learn it, why not?
Yeah.
I mean,
well, let me give a plug to two other guys, and it's in the acknowledgments in the front of the book. The Farsight Institute is a guy named Courtney Brown. You can take, as a civilian, you can take remote viewing training, and Farsight Institute is one. The other one is the Monroe Institute. I think it's in Virginia. The reason I mention them is they teach government, the same government program of control remote viewing. There's different types of remote viewing that can be taught by other institutions, but if you want the government process, the protocols, those two institutes have had at one time or another former government psychics on their payroll, teaching, administrating, whatever. So I put that in the cover of the book, so people do have an interest in learning it on their own and seeing how good they are. You can take the training, or if you type remote viewing targets into Google, it'll take you to pages where you can have practice targets to play with. So that's another.
I feel like that puts a target on your back. I'd be scared to get to dabble in that stuff. Do you think there's any kind of like a remote viewing, like a radar almost, like that they can pick up on somebody else who's picking up on it well, and it kind of puts a target on your back?
Yeah, no, it's an excellent question, and I would say I'm not an expert. I would say read Joe McMonagle's book. There is a chapter in that shining moment where we talk about that, because if you're remote viewing or bilocating, where you're actually you're leaving your body behind and you're going to look at, say, a particle beam weapon, which is true. You can read about this. If you're doing something like that, you can sense the presence of other people. Sometimes you can see a physical presence, or sometimes you might just perceive whether it's malevolent or not. So yes, to answer your question, they probably can. One example I know of is that a guy submitted an application to the Central Intelligence Agency, and this is years ago. and suddenly was overcome with that feeling. He knew that the CIA had somebody that was psychic looking at his application. So
Wow.
go figure.
You know, the more and more I think about it, and the more stories I hear, it's like life is like the X-Men or something.
Yeah,
You got bad guys, you got flying invisible spaceships, you got people who can read minds, institutes where you can go and perfect your superpowers. It's like this is the X-Men.
Yeah, it feels like it for sure. Like there's a way we can channel other parts of our beings to be something special, and other people
Well,
have different
not to freak you
abilities.
guys out, but I end most of my presentations when I'm lecturing. Well, I have a slide of the Milky Way. It's an animated slide because nobody's ever really taken a picture of it, right? And we're in one of the fingers way out there, right? Well, the Milky Way across from one end to another is about 135, 140,000 light years across. And with the naked eye, when you go outside in Colorado and look up and see all those stars, all you can see is the Milky Way with the naked eye. So the Milky Way is 135,000 light years across. The next nearest star system is how many light years away? Now, what'll grab your consciousness is we're only about 4.5 billion years old, our solar system in our Milky Way. Light Doppler tells us that the perceivable universe is over 14.5 billion years old. So if our little blue marble out in the corner of this Milky Way has only had sentient life for a few thousand years, think about the other galaxies, the other star systems, the other planets that are out there, inhabitable planets that have a 10 billion year head start on us, and then tell me that we're the only ones.
Or
Our podcast is huge in all of those areas.
yeah, we're definitely we're a big hit on XJ95.
Well, you never know. If you go RF, once it's out in the cosmos, it goes. I think wasn't that the premise behind the Jodie Foster movie? Was that Contact or something?
Yeah.
Yeah. Once it hits RF, it's going. I mean, what was it? Was the one that Carl Sagan? They recorded the record and they sent it out to photograph Pluto, and then it took off into the open space. Was it Surveyor? Or, was one of there were two of them, two satellites that they sent out. One flipped off into outer space after Jupiter, and the other one went to Pluto and then out. Those things have been transmitting for 35, 40 years.
It's crazy. Do you have a question about this stuff? Because I have another question, but it might kind of go on another tangent.
No, you go for it.
Okay. Eric, I wanted your personal opinion on this question. I know this is something that a human can't really answer with proof or anything, but the remote viewing, when I think about it, I can see it being like something that the devil, if you believe in the devil and the God, good and evil, like it could be a tool that the devil is letting us play with that could channel bad energy, or it could be something that God's given us to channel good energy, or it could be some kind of alien thing that's given us another way to expand ourselves. Basically, do you lean a certain way with it?
Well, I am a Christian. I think I put in a note. I sing in a contemporary band every once in a while, but I believe that God is the God of all the universes, the ones we can see and the ones we can't. In terms specific to your question, all I can tell you is what I've read. That you do have to exercise some caution because it's a gift. It's something that you can work on, but it's not a religion. Christians can do it, Jews can do it, Muslims can do it, atheists can do it. The point is you have to be able to relax. You have to be able to get your mind into a state where you're totally open to receiving messages from let's just say that some groups call it the Akashic record. There is a big database of knowledge that's out there, and you're going to go into it and you're going to pull out that piece of data that you want. So think of the Akashic record as a big hard drive somewhere, and you're interested in finding a missing person or determining whether the stock market's going up or down. That's just a small component of it. You can go up to YouTube and listen to binaural. We talk about this in here on how to relax and get your mind to a kind of a clean slate, and it's different for everybody. The idea is you have to sweep your earthly stuff into a dustbin temporarily so that you can create a blank screen in the back of your mind. And I was totally skeptical about this when I tried it. and about 10 years ago, and I haven't experimented with a lot, but gosh, my wife was making dinner in the other room, and I just seen something about it on TV, or I finished one of Joe McMoneagle's books. And I thought, well, damn it, I'll try it. So I had a deck of cards sitting there, shuffled it up. I pulled one card out and I just sat there and I sat back on a couch and closed my eyes, and I got absolutely nothing. In my mind, I saw every single card in the deck. We've been playing cards since we were 5, right? And it just, at one point, I thought, this isn't going to work at all. And my ex says, it's time for dinner. You're going to have to come on in here and get cleaned up. Just then, this 3 of clubs flashed up in the corner of my eye, like somebody was just holding up the edge of a card. And I thought, there's no way that's the 3 of clubs. And I flipped it over and it was. So I thought, okay, maybe I got one chance in 52 to get that right. I'll try it again sometime. The point is that was good enough for me to say, I'm willing to listen more. Now, not everybody goes into this on day one and can produce accurate drawings of Russian missile systems. The way they break you into this, and we talk about this in the book, and again, my book is fiction. Go back to the sources and read their stuff. But you start with gestalts. You start thinking about things, images as they come in. They don't come into you in any particular fashion or any particular language. You're getting raw data, and you're just going to make notations. Am I thinking about a person, or is this an event? How do I feel about this? Do I feel like there's a water gestalt? Do I feel like this something hard surface? Is it cold? Is it warm? Is it mechanical? Does it move? So you're getting impressions like that. You write those down, and sooner or later, you will start to see a pattern after you've written down enough inputs that you can start to form a basis for what you're seeing. What they tell you to totally avoid is trying to solve the puzzle too soon. It's called analytic overlay. And that's when you start to see maybe a limousine and somebody getting shot. You jump to it and say, well, that's the Kennedy assassination we're looking at here. That would be an AOL. And it might or it might not be. There's a lot of people who've been shot in cars. You don't know that. So the reason they talk about laboratory protocols and controlling remote viewing like that is to make sure that you're guided appropriately, that you're not trying to solve a puzzle too soon, and that you're getting the proper feedback. But to answer your question, it is not a religious thing. But I have been told that some people who get into this for the wrong reasons do attach themselves to the wrong kind of messaging, let's say. And you don't want that. I mean,
yeah, I feel like I'm a huge nerd when it comes to this kind of stuff, and I relate it all to like Star Wars. He said X-Men earlier, that kind of stuff. To me, it almost feels like a force, like part of like a Jedi thing. You could play with it on the good side, or you can play with it on the dark side and the Sith side, and it can kind of pull you, and they could guide you in the wrong direction if you're not careful with it. Because it does feel like a freaking sixth sense power type thing that you can channel into.
Yeah, when it comes back to intentions, I think that, again, I'm no expert on this, but if you read about it, the bilocation I talked about is when you're really intensely kind of leaving your body and traveling somewhere. And I mentioned the particle beam weapon. That's how we knew Russia was building a particle beam weapon, was because it was remote viewed, and they had a guy bilocate and actually put his hand in the beam. Well, you couldn't do that in a physical existence. So that's a form of bilocation. When we talk about other aspects of it, differentiating between clairvoyance or clairsentience or clairaudience, it's just we have a lot of sensitivities in our body that we're told at birth, hey, you shouldn't go that way. Don't mess with that. That doesn't work. And we don't. But if you think back, how many mothers have premonitions when their kids are in pain or hurting or something? Twins that are separated at birth and moved to different ends of the country can tell when one is experiencing pain or sorrow. In a clinical setting, you look at synaptic transfer. When you take a drug, how does that drug get into your bloodstream, and how does it jump across a synapse? A synapse is a very small microscopic thing, but there's a gap. It has to be sending some sort of neural impulses across there, and there's no hard wiring for it. So it can be used for good or bad, but when you begin to see, like the old Uri Geller, and I don't know if he's still alive or not, back in the 70s, he would bend spoons. that type of psychokinesis or telekinesis has been demonstrated in a lab environment. Um, can everybody do it? No. If I did it, if I was sitting here and said I'm going to make that pencil roll away and it did, I'd probably crap myself. So I mean, I don't think it's for everybody, but can that be used for bad as well as good? Yeah, probably. Could there be people out there trying to exploit that? Maybe. So that brings up the next question: is there a psychic defense force out there in the government somewhere protecting us from that? And the answer is, I have no clue.
The X-Men.
That's actually our next guest on the next episode.
Yeah, if I was psychic, I'd have known that.
We do need to plug our previous guest, since we're talking about remote viewing. The Essential Guide to Remote Viewing by Paul H. Smith. This guy's very sharp. I don't know if you've heard of him yet, Mr. Eric.
I have heard of him.
Yeah, he was on a few episodes back. We had a great episode with him. We're going to have him back on probably in February. But we're going to dive in that book eventually too, once JP and I learn how to read.
Yeah, then I can read books without looking at them.
Our wives read our books to us right now.
Oh, God.
Man, this is interesting stuff for sure. I really am fascinated by the constant pull of good and evil in the whole world. Like the whole universe is surrounded by it. It seems like a balance. And hearing these things, I'm trying my best as a Christian myself to keep the Christian mentality and not drive myself back into the simulation theory, because man, everything kind of just pulls me back to this really seems like a simulation. This seems like a hack to get into the system or something. It's just something I struggle with big time.
Yeah, I know a lot of people do. And my thought is, my question was answered in the first book of the Bible, where it said God created the heavens and the earth, and he pluralized heavens, or at least when we recorded his words, heavens was pluralized. So when you think about it, what we can tell now that they didn't know 3,000 or 4,000 years ago is a little bit more about how the universe works. The thing is that we see that basically galaxies are expanding faster than the speed of light, and we don't know how they do that. So that means that if we could see 14.5 billion years out, we don't know what's on the other side of that. If you begin to interview physicists, Michio Kaku, I think at State University in New York, and some of the other guys, they talk about different dimensions. And when we talk about UFOs, the same thing is when we see things in the night sky that aren't behaving like aircraft, are they necessarily extraterrestrial? And the answer is maybe not. We don't know. It could be drones. Anymore, you've got every drunk with a RF controlled drone is buzzing the neighborhood trying to look in people's windows. So at night, with the little red and green lights flitting around in the sky, could that look like a UFO? And the answer is yes. Are you allowed to shoot it down? The answer is not in Ohio. I don't know if you can in Colorado or not, but you're not allowed to shoot at them out here. So it could be misidentified aircraft. On the other hand, could they be interdimensional? Go back to the Rendlesham Forest case back in the 80s, and that was probably one of the biggest military reported sightings. Colonel Charles Halt was the deputy base commander. And back in Christmas in, was it 84, 85, they saw lights in the forest, and the air security police group went out to investigate it, and they saw a flying saucer. They saw it in the air, they saw it land. Skeptics said they were looking at a lighthouse, which was stupid. It was bogus. Because one of the guys, Sergeant James Peniston, actually touched it. So where I'm going with this is when Peniston touched it, his psychic perception that he got from it was that they were us from the future. So are they time travelers? Are they us coming back to make sure we don't do something stupid? Are they extra dimensional, crossing over from a different time? Or are they coming from another star system? And let me plug Paul Hellyer. I think he's still alive too. Paul Hellyer was former Canadian defense minister. He's probably the most senior politician in the world to come forward and say, no, UFOs are definitely real. And he's gone into detail to say there's probably 8 or 9 different species that have visited the planet. They're not all from the same place. So like I said, we're the young kids on the block. We've only been around for 4.5 billion years old. And the rest of the universe has a 10 billion year head start. So when people see the blue marble, could be that they're looking for something out here.
Yeah, that multiple species of alien is pretty much where I stand with Bigfoot. I believe he's a different type of alien species that's visited us. That's why people swear they see them, they disappear. I think they're just a superior type of
Yeah.
creature.
Yeah, and just because they're big and hairy doesn't mean they're not intelligent.
Yeah,
I mean, I know
my
big and hairy guys that are super
uncle was
smart.
a smart dude, man. He was hairy, big and hairy.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff out there, and I believe it. I mean, the universe is so vast and it's so big. Like, why not? Or it could be a bed sheet with little holes poked in it, and they're watching us like a simulation. Who knows? It's
Yeah, I want to give a
No,
shout out to our friend.
yeah, I do got to tell you though that the whole ghost thing, everyone that you were talking about, are there bad spirits? I stay away from ghosts. The whole thing haunting, I don't like that stuff. I don't like to talk about it because in my belief system is if you can't shoot it, you ought not to be messing with it. Just my personal thing. So I stay away from it.
Smart man.
Yep.
Yeah, I feel you on that. I just recently got into that. I blame the haunted side guys that are on YouTube. They're reoccurring guests of ours, but yeah, I've gotten into it recently. But JP keeps warning me.
Brave dudes,
Stop
brave
doing
dudes.
it.
Don't get followed home by a demon.
Yeah, that stuff is freaky. I want to say real quick about what I mentioned earlier though with the simulation. Our friend P Hud gave me good advice too that if it is a simulation, it still had to be created by something. So we'll give that credit to God as well. So it's kind of where I'm at with it. So
Yeah, there's a thought.
Yeah.
I thought about that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So God created it.
Yeah.
That's my way of handling it for now.
It's one of those things that when you die, there's no coming back. You don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know.
Or is there?
No, nobody can ever tell you. Yeah.
Well, and the other way to look at it is maybe it's so good on the other side you just don't want it.
That's kind of where I'm hoping. That's the way I was raised.
Yeah,
It's better.
that's really the best thing you can hope for.
That's what freaks me out about people that don't believe in anything and atheists and stuff, where you're dead and it's done. Like the afterlife, and they all want to extend their lives, and all these weird high political people that want to live forever. Like this is not the end all. I think there's something else after this. And to not want to go to the next realm just makes me question their moral compass. Like, what have you done in this world? Or you don't want to have to pay for the next thing.
Yeah.
And often, I understand agnosticism better, perhaps, because atheists to say that everything you know about the universe, you don't believe in anything after life, you don't believe that we transcend something, you don't believe we go somewhere, we better ourselves. When every other religion on the planet, Hindus going back to, Hindus gave us our first flying saucer reports in the I can't pronounce it, but they talk about that in Christianity and Islam. Every religion, they can't all be wrong. And you just got to understand that there's more out there than meets the eye. And going back to the scientific study of it, when I mentioned Michio Kaku, if there's 7 dimensions that physicists think can coexist at the same time, how do we know that God isn't the 8th? How do we don't? We're in no position to really tell. And that's why I say maybe once you cross over, it's so nice on the other side. That's why people don't come back.
Yeah, I'm hoping so.
Yeah, that's best you can hope for.
All right, Mr. Lowans, we're going to go into the 6 questions, and then we'll cut you loose. I appreciate you coming on our podcast. It's been a lot of fun getting to know you. And anytime you have a book out or you want to come back on to talk about something, you're always welcome to come back too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that'd be great, because I do have another one coming out in about 6 months.
Perfect.
Awesome. That's perfect.
Perfect. We'll be here.
Yep, we will. We'll be even more seasoned. All right, you ready for the 6 questions?
I am. Hit me with your best shot.
Number 1, you have the power to make one law. What law do you create?
You're gonna think this is terribly penny ante, but under my administration, to be illegal for telemarketers to spoof fake telephone numbers and robocall you, I think it should be a capital offense. I think that we have to develop an international program because all these SOBs are overseas. And my personal belief is that if you block a call and they call you back 2 days later from another line and then say, "My name is Fred, and I'm calling you from Columbus, Ohio," and you know that they're not, we should be able to drag them behind a truck until their limbs fall off. I'm sorry, I meant that in a good Christian way, by the way.
I like it.
You have no idea how many of these I get a day.
Yeah.
At work, on my personal phone, and everything. Like,
I just found a way on my iPhone that you can set like your thing to block spam calls.
Yeah.
And that thing is a game changer for me. I love it.
Yeah.
They still come through, but they don't make my phone ring, and it doesn't hold up my phone at all. So I don't remember how I did it, but I highly recommend everybody do that. Dig in your settings, because that shit is annoying.
Yeah.
I wish they would. They had to use their real number. That way, I could call them back and mess with them anytime I wanted to.
Yeah.
For my
Oh, yeah.
podcast.
Well, you know, you can have fun with it. If you hit the right buttons to get connected, you can drag them out there for like a half an hour going, listen, wait, my credit card? Yeah, 4, 6. No, wait, that's a 3.
Yeah.
And the objective should be, how long can you keep them on until they get frustrated and hang up? Or if you like to practice your accents for your radio show, you can be German one day and Spanish the next. You got to have fun with them.
Absolutely. Number 2, what 3 words would you choose to describe yourself?
I'm going to go with tenacious, resilient, but above all, curious.
Those are solid. I like 'em.
Yeah.
Number 3, what do you want to be remembered for?
Well, thanks to your show, I'd like to be remembered as a best-selling novelist.
Well, you can already consider yourself New York Times bestseller, because everybody comes on our show. Their books.
All right.
Like,
You just reached out to millions of people just now.
hopefully we do get some. Yeah, I do want to say this right now. Anybody listening, that any of the authors that we get on and you do buy their books, email us and let us know, because I'll hook you up with a T-shirt. We'll make sure we give you a shout out. You supporting our guests, we definitely want to give you some attention to. We appreciate that, and curious what you think of their books as well.
Yeah.
So let us know.
Yeah, I always say if you really, really like the book, give me a good feedback on Amazon, and if you hate it, just send me a private note.
Yeah, just a little email and go straight to spam. Number 4, what is something you like that most people don't know about you?
I am a closet entertainer. I might have mentioned I sang and played some instruments in college, and I'm a lot older than you guys. I'm not as old as your dad there, Ewelly, but I got to sing on stage a couple of times with the group called the Letterman. You're going to have to YouTube them, because most of your generation has never heard of them. It was vocal harmony. It was 3-part harmony. When Three Dog Night talked about that song, you guys probably don't remember Three Dog Night, but
Definitely heard of them.
Yeah. Well, anyway, the Letterman did that stuff throughout the 60s and 70s. They still perform. Some, not a lot, but they're still getting out there because they're in the 65 to 75 range, I think. But yeah, I was a closet entertainer, and my parents were very practical, and they said, "We don't care what you do in your spare time, but damn it, you're going to college and get a job." So that's why I got out of music.
What did you do in music? You sing? You play guitar?
Yeah, I do mostly vocals now, but I was a brass. I did trumpet, valve trombone, baritone, euphonia. We did the mellophone, which is marching French horn, which is an F instrument as opposed to B flat. I do a little bit of keyboards, like drums, have a great time on the drums. But I tried guitar for a while. I'm sorry, what?
If I could do one of those, I'd be.
Well, it relieves stress because you just can't drink every day. I can't fret. I have had some injuries to my left hand, which I can still use it, but I just can't fret. You know, you got guitar strings are tough to poke straight down on. So if you guys play guitar, you know, but I've always had difficulty with guitars. So I just it's sitting down there in the basement waiting for me.
Yeah.
That's impressive. Yeah, JP and I can't play anything, so that's really cool. You want to give us a number real quick with the vocals?
I don't know, a song that more than the greatest love the world has known. You can YouTube that one too.
Not bad.
Not bad at all. We got talented guests on this show.
Absolutely.
Number 5, if you could have any superpower, which would you choose and why?
Giving great thought to this. Have to be invisibility, because think about it. You could get great intelligence information. Obviously, you could get free air travel, and I would finally get a chance to meet Jennifer Aniston, if you know what I mean.
Jennifer Aniston. Yeah, I got a buddy who's obsessed with her too. She's never done it for me, man. I don't know why.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, back in his Friends days, though, yeah, that was appealing. But
I guess everybody has their own poison. If she moved to Columbus and said, "Hey, would you be mine forever?" I'd be like, "Yeah, I'm. That's it. We're done."
Yeah, I got a buddy that would kill me for it for sure. JP sounds like he's into her too, but never did it for me. I'm more of a Elizabeth Shue and what's her name, the Italian actress, drawing a blank. Marissa Tomei. That's my.
Oh, I like her. Isn't she older than you though?
Oh yeah, but I don't care.
See, I've always had a thing for Scarlett Johansson. She did all those Avenger movies and stuff, and I thought her kicking butt in a leather outfit. I'm sorry, let's not go that way.
Oh yeah, if we're going down that road, we'll go Underworld. Kate Beckinsale. That's top notch. So we went from superpowers to chicks.
That's how it works.
Oh, what did you say? Invisibility?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Invisibility. Yeah, that's my superpower.
That one would be a lot of fun. I would have a lot of fun with it. I feel like I would drive myself crazy with it, though. What would you do being invisible?
I would try to see how long I could go invisible. Maybe years. Be invisible just for years.
What if it like
disappear from the world and then just come back years later? I don't know. That's interesting.
The one thing you would have to worry about,
still physical.
If you went invisible, yeah, you'd have to be careful crossing the street because cars wouldn't see you.
Yeah, there would be so much weird adjustment period time with that. Like you assume things see you and they don't. Birds will fly into you.
Yeah,
it'd be pretty wild. It'd be fun to mess with animals. I would have a blast messing with animals, cats, and all that good stuff. All right, the last question, number 6. If you could know the absolute truth on one conspiracy theory, which would it be?
Gosh, there are so many good ones out there. I got to be honest with you and say that I would stick with the whole JFK thing because there have been so many books. I was a criminology student in college and read everything I could on the JFK assassination. If I haven't pointed this out for people that read my book, I would urge them to read David Lifton's book called Best Evidence. And then I would also urge them to read Bonar Menninger's book with Howard Donahue, which is called Mortal Error. Those two books have the best forensic accounting of the evidence. They do the best job of that. And they're not pointing figures to say who shot who when, but what they're saying is, here's what the evidence indicates. So I would push in that direction. So with the JFK assassination, I really would like to know what the real deal was. And I'm not alone, because if you remember Clinton, when he got in office, he told Webb Hubbell when he was AG, he said, I want to know 2 things. I want to know who killed John Kennedy, and I want to know this UFO thing. Yeah. And Hubbell came back and he wrote a book later and said, I failed on both accounts, couldn't find out diddly squat on either one. So there you go. But if I only could learn one conspiracy, that would be it. Because as people in a certain age group that lived through this are beginning to die off, they're giving us bits and pieces that bring the picture together. And if you think back to Jesse Marcel holding that kite, that black and white photograph, you know, the guy that shot that picture on his deathbed said, it was bull. That was a kite. The real wreckage of the flying saucer was about 3 offices down. They didn't want pictures of that. They wanted pictures of Jesse. I have another friend whose aunt, and I got to be careful about this. You guys ever hear the story of the Philadelphia experiment where they supposedly, yeah. Well, the government denied that for years and years. And there was a person who worked in the Navy Yard there who said they made us sign documents that said if we ever talked about it, it'd be life in prison. And she's passed away now too. But the point was that as people are dropping off the planet here, we're finding more and more of them coming forward to give us bits and pieces to help solve some of these riddles. So eventually somebody's going to come forward and talk about Kennedy. All these other stories, all these other the conspiracies, I think eventually, if we live long enough, we'll get to the bottom of them. But that's why we push for disclosure.
Good stuff, man.
Yeah,
it's great having you on, Eric. We'll definitely want to get you back on that next book. We'll stay in touch and we'll get you booked back on here. Where can we find the book right now? What's the best place to buy it?
I would go to Amazon, because if you like Kindle, you can get a Kindle book off of Amazon, or you can get the hard copy. It's also available through Barnes & Noble or Ingram and most of the other major book dealers.
Perfect. Do you have anything else you'd like to plug? You got a social media or anything people can find you?
There is a Facebook site out there. I actually haven't been on it. The publishers helped put it out there, and it's just something I need to get to. With Thanksgiving weekend behind us here, I kind of put everything on hold. So there is a Facebook site, and I'll start monitoring that for communications. Okay. So check out Eric Lowans, author. I think is how they put that up, or that shining moment. And by golly, I promise I will reply to whoever sends stuff in.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a lot of fun. It's good to get to know you, and we're looking forward to diving into this book, That Shining Moment by Eric Lowans.
Yeah, thank you so much, guys. It was great meeting both of you, and have a great evening, great weekend.
Yeah,
You too.